Hey guys, Johnny Galt with Iron Lotus Tattoo in Boulder, Colorado, and today I have a very special video request for you guys. This video is, in particular is going to be very informative, and it's going to be very good for people who are aspiring artists or new apprentices who are, looking to get a little bit of information here. It'll also have some information for some of the advanced guys as well that are looking to get some question answered on short taper needles, textured needles, bug pin needles, and super tight groupings and whatnot. So, before I start off, I'm going to go ahead and say, thanks for all the love I've been getting, guys. My machines are doing excellent. You guys are buying them and stuff. Congrats to some of the people that actually won the auctions on them, who ended up getting them. It was pretty cool to see that they went for as much as they did, and a lot of people have, the feedback is 100%. Everyone's really liking everything, so thanks for that. To all the haters that have been really freaking out there, thanks for all the comments. You're making me money every time you comment and say shit, so thanks a ton on that. Really helping me out there, actually. The more you talk shit, the more money I make, so all good there. But what I'm going to talk about today is the different types of needles you can use and what the functions of those specific needles are and what kind of, what different types of needles are out there available to you to make your job easier. Now, before I get started, I'm going to say a few things. If you guys know if you know an artist, or if you know someone who is a scratcher or whatever, and they only use single needles, and you get some people, I know about some supply stores in the area where I've been sponsored by quite a few people now, and I go into some supply stores and talk to people, and they say, oh yeah, we got this guy who came in and he bought 150 single needles for all of his work. I'm gonna let you guys know beforehand. That's generally a sign that a person learned in jail, because in prison, when a person starts tattooing, they learn how to use they sharpen a paper clip, and that's what they start with, is using a single needle only to shade and do everything. And their work is very spotty. It's almost like just nothing but stippling in the work. And just to let you guys know, if you know somebody who's doing that, stop. Don't use single needles. Don't use smaller groupings, but as well, don't use larger groupings just because you're comfortable with them. When me and my younger brother first started out, my younger brother had this thing where he would only use 9-round liners for almost everything. He would use a 9-round liner. For coloring, 9-round liner. Shading, 9-round liner. And it was because he learned the depth and what it was supposed to look like going into the skin with that one needle. I actually have quite a few people who ask me, hey, what needles do you use for when you tattoo? That's like asking a farmer what kind of soil he grows in when he farms. It's such a broad spectrum question. It's like the only way I answer people when they ask me that shit is I use the sharp ones, because that's the truth. I mean, you're not asking me, what do you use for Japanese or Japanese line work? What do you use for your Japanese shading? What do you use, for your black and gray color, your black and gray portraits or photorealism? It's really specific what I use. I actually have different types of needles and machine settings for each style or job that I use, and it's your job as an artist to know these things. So what I'm going to start by saying is, if you have a go-to needle, don't use your go-to needle for everything. Don't be afraid to venture out and learn how to tattoo correctly. Using a particular needle or particular settings as a crutch is how a lot of these guys who are like, yeah, I got 25 years in the industry, and their work looks like shit, those are those guys. You don't want to be that guy whose work hit a fucking a stagnant point and you never got better. You never want to be that dude. You want to keep getting better and, get to the top of the pinnacle and, be looking down at everyone else from there. So what I'm going to explain here is, this is a 9-round liner here. This right here, this first needle, is a standard 9-round liner. This is generally known as the Lee Harvey Oswald. This is just the go-to needle for, most artists that are out there. They just go, okay, not, standard size job. This is used to line work about the size of your palm with standard looking lines. Nothing crazy, nothing thick, but at the same time, I mean, if you bring it back really far and go shallow, it could leave some narrow lines, okay? These particular needles for me are very uncomfortable to use. I don't like to use them because they're too standard. They're too, I've never done just like a standard tattoo, bam, that's a tattoo, standard script, standard shit. I've never done that before, so I don't really like to use these. If I need to make lines this thick, what I will actually use to make these particular types of lines, where these needles, you can see here, because the solder is closer together, it brings them more narrow. These are liner needles, and then what happens is when the many needles are brought to a grouping like so, it makes the group of the needles are shaped like this, almost towards a centering point where they meet. What this does is when they enter the skin as a grouping, what it causes is the skin splits more. Rather than, receiving a medium or a divided pressure over the many needles rather than being applied to one point. This causes more trauma this way because they're much more closely adjoined. Now, if I'm actually going to get lines this size, what I actually use is the same brand of needles, but what I use is a 7-round shader. Now you can see here that the solder is much further back, which causes the grouping to, instead of being shaped like this, like the previous needle, it's more shaped like this. It's straight. So when you do your lines come out even, smooth, and bold. Now, if you're doing much smaller work, you can actually use a 7-round shader to color, to detail in corners. Like, let's say there's a little tiny bit of shading or a little tiny bit of black in a little area, and you have this set into a liner. You can use this to detail those little corners and bring out those little tiny areas with shading to make them pop and look more rich. At the same time, you can also use this to line and make big, thick, bold lines. What I actually do is when I'm doing back pieces, I use my my reverse angle, my hand-built reverse angle liner that I made myself to push big round shaders to line back pieces. Because in a back piece, you're going to have a lot of lines, you're going to have a lot of work to do, and you don't want to spend your whole day just doing the line work. So what I use is I'll probably use like an 18-round shader, and my machines pack those easy. So what it'll do is it creates a nice big thick bold line single pass, and I don't really have to worry about depth because the needle's not pointed too far to the center. And at the same time, if there's little corners and areas that I need to detail, I'll detail it after I do the line work. And it saves me a lot of time, and it keeps me from having to switch machines on the fly. So it cuts down a lot of time. That is the 7-round shader, but you can also use any type of round shader needle to that specific function anytime you're tattooing. Now, this is a very class-specific needle. This is what is known as a super tight bug pin liner. You can hardly see it, but when you get very close to this needle, this particular needle is actually a 5. This is, if you can believe it, this is a 5 bug pin. 5 bug pins super tight. This is the equivalent of a 3 super tight standard, or very close to a single needle. Something like this particular needle, I actually use this for if I have very, very thin or very feminine and elegant script. I will actually do the entire outline with this particular needle, and then if there's areas that are thicker that need detailing, after I do the full stencil with this needle, I'll go over with maybe a 7-round shader or a 5-round shader standard, and it thickens up the little areas that I need to, and it leaves very smooth, elegant lines. Now, what this needle is actually used for in most of my daily work that I really love is this needle right here is used for detailing facial areas in black and gray photorealism. I take this little super tight number 5 bug pin, I put it in my liner, and in the same liner that I use my 14-round shaders, I turn the voltage down, and it allows me to detail around eyeballs, it allows me to detail or do eyelashes, around the nose, the little tiny areas around the lips, the inside of corneas when I'm doing the photorealism, and it works excellent for that. I actually learned this technique right here from Franco Vescovi, and I've never gone back because this particular needle is so good for detailing black and gray photorealism. It really is top notch. It also allows me to put in those little tiny white highlights and streaks inside of hair at the very end of the tattoo very, very well. So this is an absolutely essential tool to have in your arsenal if you want to become a black and gray photorealism expert. Now, going a little further up the chain of the round series, like the round pointed series, this is a 14-round short taper. This is a 14-round shader, but it is a short taper needle, and you can tell as such when you look at it closely, because the taper on the needles is very, very short and very drastic. What this particular needle does is it packs color that is very, very, like let's say you're detailing something very small, but you can't color it with a mag, a mag or a flat needle, because you need to, move around a lot of lines. So let's say if it was like a tribal flower or like tribal filigree, like on a pistol or something, and you had to get the gray in, you would color the in-between areas with a very particular needle like this one, where you need to get the color in fast, and you don't have a lot of passes to do it because there's a lot of trauma to the skin due to the line work. This is a little bit bigger. Also, what I would use this one for is single pass lining on like a big giant back piece, because it would leave behind almost like thicker, almost like permanent marker size lines as I was working. So that's what I would use this one for. I wouldn't use this one for a lot of smaller work, only very job specific smaller work here. Now, moving away from the needles that we use to line with, what I have here, this is an 11 round magnum. Now, what I mean by round magnum is it's curved. What I prefer if you're a new artist is if you're going to use a mag, use a round mag or a curved mag, because a lot of you guys aren't ready to be using flat mags yet if you're new, especially because they're just so dangerous. If these are flipped on their side, these and flat magnums can be used to line a tattoo and creates very thin single needle almost lines. But what these are primarily used for is shading, which means putting in gray wash or gradients of black and gray, and then packing color. This right here is a textured needle. Now, this textured needle, actually, the outsides of the needle have been sprayed and then heated so that the outer texture raises up. Microscopically, when you get very close, they're raised up. What this does is it causes ink to cling to the needle more, so when it's pushed into the skin, it sticks. It just sticks better. Unfortunately, it causes much more trauma to the skin around it when these are used. So you have to be very careful with these. These particular needles right here are used for packing color. I would never use this to shade with. I would only use this specific needle right here, a textured mag, for packing in very large amounts of color, or where I need to get in very solid color like yellow or maybe like a green or a turquoise. When I need to pack it in on a single pass and get it in very thick, rich, and solid. That's what I would use this particular needle right here for. Now, moving on in our mag series, I have here an 11 round bug pin magnum. Now, in the bug pin magnum, the needles are much thinner and the taper is much longer. What this allows you to do is it allows you to get many passes over the skin without causing any trauma. And the reason that is because these are very valuable, is because when you're building up your gray wash, you don't want to over traumatize the skin, because gray wash has to be built up. Any shades of gray, black, or midtones, they need to be built up, especially when you're doing black and gray photorealism. I use these particular needles not to pack color, unless maybe I'm doing like a color portrait, because if the way you have to look at needles is you look at them as pixels, so the more needles you have in a smaller area, the finer your color or the finer your gray wash will be. That's why I use this particular needle, and I use my 5 bug pin liner for doing portraits. If I'm doing a black and gray portrait, this allows me to get in the smooth gradients of gray and mid-gray and light gray with just ease. It allows me to pack them in smoothly and build them up so I can get the exact tone and the exact fade that I need in any part of the tattoo that I'm working on. Now down here we have Hank the Tank, the generally just known as the big needle. These are the standard 23 Magnum standard. Now, a 23 Magnum like this would be used maybe to shade on the back, but generally the main purpose of a needle this large is to pack color in big ass areas. Now, it leaves behind us an area of color as wide, almost nearly as wide as my thumb when you look at it here, but it requires a very strong machine to pack it in. Because you have more needles on the bar, you're going to need more force to push every one of these needles in 2 millimeters. You're going to need a lot of force to push this. So what I actually do is I specifically use a direct drive rotary for these exact needles and nothing else, because nothing else will push a needle this large in easily. Unless unless I'm using one of my coil machines and I've got one of my coil color packers turned the fuck up, and it's just screaming and it's just rolling on the skin hella hard. But other than that, I would only use this needle to basically to pack color. If it were a large bug pen, maybe I would use it to shade a large back piece, but I'd probably still use the 11 so I could get, or 11 or maybe like a 17 or an 18, just to get, some more accurate, some more accurate gray wash. And the reason why is because too many passes with a needle like this at the right depth will absolutely chew the skin with ease, and you'll damage someone's skin very badly. So that's all for the video today, guys. If you guys have any more questions, be sure to ask me on YouTube. I stopped accepting friend requests on Facebook because of the amount of threats and all the crazy shit that's been going on. Some of you guys that have been adding me have been really great to me. I have great fans. I have a great following. But the guys that are starting to make threats, it's getting really serious. I really can't have people knowing my personal information as much as I thought anymore. But remember to like, rate, subscribe, guys. If you have any questions, put them in the comment section below, and I will be more than happy to answer them for you guys. So thanks for watching.